So please give it up for James Fadiman.
We're gonna change moods here from the incredible healing intensity that I've just been listening to the kind of softest side of psychedelics, which is now called microdosing. So take a deep breath, kind of shake your hands a little bit and bodies and change selves, because this is going to be a little easier on you, but has some surprises. And because I'm going to undoubtedly run out of time because we're running late, I'm going to give you the kinds of things that I get in the mail, and then we'll go back and fill in what's going on that leads to this. This is from Reddit. There's a section on Reddit on microdosing. It has over 25,000 people on it, and including this. I have borderline personality disorder as well as autism. My mood is unstable, I have a short fuse, and I have difficulty understanding other people's perspectives. Basically, I'm awful to be around. For the last few months, I was in a horrible depression. I didn't go outside. I really mean this. I stopped talking to my friends, deleted Facebook. It got so bad, I was experiencing depersonalization. Suicide just felt like what I was supposed to do next. So I bought a tab of acid and cut it into 8 little pieces and microdosed. It's been 4 days since my first dose, and I'm still obviously autistic because of my mannerisms and the way I speak. But my anxiety is so manageable. My mood is stable. My boyfriend even had to quit his job yesterday. I was so calm when he was freaking out. Without LSD, I know I would have started a fight over it, but instead I made him feel safe and supported. I helped him calm down because I wasn't overwhelmed. It sounds so small if you're neurotypical, but this is a huge deal to me. This is the person I've always wanted to be. The nice girl that was stuck inside a sick brain has finally been freed. Maybe I'm not cured, but I'm better. Thank you guys for saving my life. Now remember, that's microdosing. That is not a trip to Peru and 5 ayahuasca sessions in 12 days. And I want you to get that microdosing basically arose out of a mistake, but a lot of real science, in spite of the way they write it up, is simply mistakes. And let me just give you one that's really important, that's not psychedelic. But in 1928, a guy named Fleming was a bacteriologist in a hospital and came back from vacation with his workbench as messy as usual. And he had some colonies of streptococcus in little petri dishes. And he noticed that a mold called penicillin had contaminated his petri dishes. And he looked under the microscope and found out, to his amazement, that the mold prevented the normal growth of the streptococcus. From that mistake, we have antibiotics, and eventually changed the culture of medicine and can be credited for extending, probably a lot of the lifespans of the people in this room. In 1938, Albert Hofmann made a mistake. He synthesized LSD-25 and gave it to mice. And although they high-fived him and said that was the best thing they'd had in weeks, he didn't speak mouse, so he put it back on the shelf. And in 1943, he made another mistake and got a little bit of it under his finger, or so they say. And I think we can credit him for extending the mind span of millions of people. And most of you are here today because of his mistake. Well, my mistake was less impressive, But I thought I'd been told that Albert had taken doses of LSD as low as 10 micrograms, and that those doses were a major factor in his long, active, and intellectually remarkable life. From that misunderstanding, I began to investigate what's now called microdosing. The fact is that Albert never ascribed his health to the use of low-dose psychedelics. He took them very seldom, and his actual dose was between 20 and 50 mics, way higher than microdoses. Okay? But the reverberations from the mistake is we discovered and have now explored a whole new range of psychedelic effects, different in almost every way from high-dose experience. And we've opened up new avenues of healing as well as new ways to enhance well-being. So, how many of you have microdosed? Hands, please. Okay. So, can the rest of you just talk to them and I'm done? Okay, what did we first discover? We first discovered that a 10 micrograms of LSD has distinct and in many cases powerful noticeable effects. If you look in the literature, there's a fair number of papers that said nothing is discernible below 25 mics. Okay, so much for the literature. And we learned that other psychedelics at the same kind of dose level have pretty much the same effects. And the major initial finding was that microdoses do not disrupt, but enhance normal functioning. And for many people, again, early discovery, it's a 2-day effect. And for a number of people, the second day is better. So that led to what I call search, which is trying to map this new country that we discovered called microdose land. And that's as much as we knew what I just told you. So we came up with a protocol, which many of you I hope know, which is you dose 1 day and you do not dose 2 days. And you do that for about a month. And then for a couple of years, the last instruction was, please send me a report of what you've learned, of what you've experienced, of what you've discovered. And for example, surprises unknown to the rest of the psychedelic literature. I get a note from a woman in London, art historian, who says, I know I owe you a report, but I thought you might be interested in the fact that during my month of microdosing, I had my period, which has always been painful and crampy. It was normal. And then I wrote back and said, you know, the usual things that researchers say, which is, what was the substance, what was the dose, what was the frequency, and what are you doing every month? And she wrote back and said, I'm not doing anything every month. I only microdosed for that 1 month. My periods are normal. You have changed my life. Thank you. So we now have a little sub-study because there are a number of women who've reported similar incredible improvements, and we're working with a researcher in the field, and we'll let you know what we find out. What we're seeing is that there are several reasons why women have awful periods, and microdosing seems to help some of those, and that's as far as we've gotten. But again, notice that this is a new realm, and you know, I've been in the psychedelic world for a long, long time, and nobody's ever said that before. So, and again, if you look at all the brain imaging research that are so pretty these days, it also says nothing about it. So this is why I call it search. Now, after a few years of search, I've got these reports, not the faintest idea of how to deal with it, except to write people nice thank you notes. Sophia Korb joins me, and Sophia was last night presenting much more of our formal data to the conference in Prague. And so when the Prague videos are released, if you want to find out our statistics, you can see Sophia's, but I don't have a PowerPoint for two reasons. One is the computer that I did it on literally had a melted part 2 days ago, which is always an exciting moment when you think, did the memory go or just the screen? I think I was informed it's just the screen. So you're going to just have to listen, not watch something. But we have Sophia, when she joined me, we then added analytic skills, survey skills, and a clinical background. And we then put a slightly more formal protocol, which is if you go to our site, microdosingpsychedelics.com, what you'll get is a lot of information about microdosing, information about the doses for various substances, information about for groups that shouldn't take it, and there are a few. And you'll be suggested that you try 1 day on, 2 days off, and a daily check-in on 23 variables, and a report at the end of the month. And then we also include demographics, reasons for taking it, prior mental and physical states. We have a control group, etc. Now, what we found is the 23 variables basically are positive emotions and negative emotions. And without going into great detail, over the period of a month, people's positive emotions continue to rise and negative emotions continue to decline in intensity. That's the basic. At the moment, we're looking at about 400 subjects from 59 countries, plus a lot of reports from people who altered the protocol, didn't complete the full month, and people who did lots of other variations and wanted to tell us about it. So we're sitting on a huge mass of data. We have a couple of other volunteers who are starting to work on the analysis. And for those of you that need to wait for publications before you put something in your mouth, you've got a little bit of time to wait, and I don't think that's bothering much of you. So while we're collecting data and answering questions, because of the extensive media coverage, worldwide interest and rapid rise in use has been unabated. And as of today, there are a couple of small survey studies that are either published or going through the last round of corrections to press. But all of this, and we're talking hundreds of thousands of people worldwide who've been microdosing with no formal controlled studies completed. And I think what this says is that if something apparently is safe and apparently helps a lot of people, citizen science is going to move much more quickly than conventional science. And if you think about it, psychedelics have been propelled throughout their history since Albert got it under his finger by citizen science. So it's you all who are actually moving this all forward. And sometimes I feel like I'm the guy in the parade who's gone behind the horse with the dustpan. And I'm analyzing the little bits you leave behind, but the point is you are the forward wave of this, and this is where the information comes from, like the woman in London. So we also have, there's one double blind that was completed, not yet analyzed. There's a gorgeously designed double blind about to be started, which will include a daily reminder app. And we had several beautiful bubble blind proposals from dealers on the dark web, who, at least the ones who sell psychedelics, seem to be really lovely people. And really, and one of them said, well, I can probably get you 2,000 subjects in the next couple of weeks. And I thought, there's a world here that I really don't understand. But very sweet people. And I'm sure there's some bad people, even on the dark web. So what do we know? from our daily check-in, and I've really said to it, is positive emotions are enhanced, negative emotions decline. And let me just give you a little bit of a list. And this is partly from something I said at Reagan conventions, but in general, conditions which have improved with microdosing include, and I'm going to do this fast so you just get an idea for it, which is anxiety, social and academic, especially parties, bipolar, mood elevation during the depression phase. My favorite is no post-Burning Man crash on returning home. Changes in creativity, coding, machine design, decreased or stopped cigarettes, coffee, Adderall, Zoloft, venlafaxine, sorry, one that I don't use. Depression alleviated. This is probably where we have the most reports of people both what are called treatment resistant, which always seems to be an insult to the person. They didn't resist the treatment. But anyway, depression, headaches, that's the very short version of cluster headaches. Cluster headaches will be improved by psychedelics, but very rarely with microdosing. It takes massive doses for clusters. Health habits, people improve their food choices, their exercise, yoga, meditation. They have insights, personal, therapeutic, work-related. There's enhanced learning, languages, advanced math. A lot of students write that they basically can pay attention even to poor professors. So probably we now have a whole new support group known as poor professors. Migraines lessened or eliminated, usually not eliminated, but maybe down 80 to 90%. Improvement in a number of martial arts, including people at the world champion level. Physical skills of musical instruments, drumming, flying a plane, driving. Trauma decreased triggering, meaning we're not having a total, magnificent reversal of a trauma, but we simply, and again, the woman that I read from talks about not being triggered. Procrastination, this one I really like, is again and again we say, I just am not procrastinating anymore. And for a while I was worried because if it improves procrastination, will the pharmaceutical industry then say, oh my God, procrastination is a disease? We can get we can get pills for it. Stuttering, writer's block, first drafts. That's true of lots of journalists who've interviewed me. Meaning they interview me and then they write me about their microdosing, or they microdose and then interview me. I've never quite dealt with so many journalists who are so willing to self-experiment. And then just work. People's work life improves the amount, discrimination, flow, quality, and enjoyment. So that's all positives, hooray, hooray. Negatives. People who have general anxiety, on the whole, don't like microdosing. They feel either more anxious or more aware of anxiety. Then one that I love, because it just brings out the geek in all of us. People who are colorblind don't like microdosing. And what they get is tracers, and if you don't know what tracers are, turn to the person next to you and ask them if they've been to Burning, and were those tracers. People who have red-green blindness, the color blindness, report that the tracers go on for a few days afterwards. So I hope one of you is really excited by that to either do your dissertation or make your career. We have on the microdosingpsychedelics.com site a little tab that says drug interactions. And basically people have said, I'm taking the following, and it has not interfered with microdosing. At the moment, between drugs and supplements, there's 185 items on that list. So if you're microdosing and taking something else, take a look. The one negative we found, and it is not for everyone, but people who are on lithium, at least one or two people have had very severe interactions. And we don't understand it. We just say, watch out and don't use it if you're taking lithium. Now, we've also asked various people not to join our study because it's an open study, anyone can sign up. We've asked pregnant people not to for fairly obvious reasons. And we've also asked people who are high-functioning autistic not to join because what we find, honestly, is they don't seem to have the same effects until they're into the to the Hoffman range of 40 to 50 micrograms. And we're just not doing research at that high level. Now, also people dropped out of the study. Some had no effect. I have a wonderful description, very successful, of someone that says, honestly, I'm just too lazy to fill in the little form every day. So, so we've actually asked some of the people who dropped out, who usually vanish in pharmaceutical studies, why they did, and some of them felt kind of perfectionistic, which is, gee, I missed a day or two, so I dropped out. I changed substances, and I decided that was not all right, or it had no effect. So unlike, again, hard science, it's change your protocol. Our primary concern from the onset was safety and efficacy. And what we found is that a lot of people lowered their dose from 10 micrograms, say, to 8. And we've actually changed the ranges on our website to reflect what people are now telling us. Now, in strict pharmacological research, that is probably, there may be worse sins, but I don't know them. And we're not doing pharmacological research, we're doing search. Also, people change substances, and we say, fine. And what else do they do here? And they also change frequency. We say 1 day on, 2 days off. Some people say, well, I take it on the weekends, or I take it once a week, or I decided to do it more often. And we basically say, just let us know what you're doing, and we'll work from there. The 3-day window was actually a research protocol design originally, because we knew we had a 2-day effect. And I originally wanted a 3rd day where you came down to baseline so you could tell the difference. But what we found is about after a month is that 3rd day, often the difference is not necessarily as noticeable because the base of whatever you've been working on has risen. So the next step, obviously, after search is research. And research is when you've heard papers, and you'll hear more of them today, when you take a limited sample, a limited point of view, you ask everyone to be depressed, or everyone to be obese, or everyone to be between the ages of 30 and 38, whatever it is. And that's wonderful. And what we're finding is that because of the search we've done, which says there's a whole country out there, there's a lot of research starting up. On the East Coast, one trial has been approved on safety and efficacy, follow-on studies designed. There's a double-blind completed, I mentioned it. An IRB has been approved at a university, meaning permission to do it. Their first study will be microdosing. West Coast, there's a Department of Brain Science getting their permits. Their first study will be microdosing. There's a senior psychedelic researcher who, for the first time, is considering microdosing. There's an EEG study, and MAPSS, of course, is considering some clinical studies. In the Bay Area, there's a study almost ready to start. And that will be an EEG plus questionnaire study. In Canada, there are 2 universities on the East Coast setting up studies and getting funding. And on the West Coast, there's a huge survey study getting its IRB and another double-blind study. In England, there are 2 studies proposed on creativity and cognitive function. Denmark, there's an EEG study delayed till fall. Brazil, there's a brainwave study looking at microdoses, low doses, and light doses. And that's only the ones that have talked to us. So the next wave of research is on its way. And all I really want to do now is to give you another couple of reports from individuals, because that's what keeps us going. Did I mention that this research has been unfunded? Like a lot of it. This is one that just came in actually last week, and I thought, I'd like you to see what really happens. It's kind of like the Wizard of Oz. I want you to pull back the curtain and see that little guy, which is me, running the little fancy machine that says, here are the results of microdosing of the great and powerful Jim and Sophia. Okay, here it goes. Late 2016. Again, think of your own psychedelic experiences, and you probably have not thought about this one. I had a shingles outbreak that was left untreated. By the time I got to the doctor, the rash started spreading from my back to the right side of my body. The doctor gave me cream. It was too late to take the antivirals. The rash went away in about 2 weeks. About a month later, my hell began. I started having intense pain in the upper right side of my torso. Neck felt like it was on fire. Chest and back felt like I had a blade running through it nonstop. And my arm felt like it was electrocuted. Fairly awful, okay? Some of my friends were aware of my situation and told me they'd found some mushrooms. I had no previous experience with them before, but somehow knew that they would help. Now, I just want to stop at that because that's a fascinating little piece. I might mention that this is from someone in a Central African republic. On the 11th of April, I took my first microdose, and within 45 minutes, I was pain-free. And for the first time in a very long time. And not only pain-free, I was anxiety and depression-free as well. For the past 2 months, my life has changed for the better. I am still pain-free. And I would like to note a few more personal improvements. All right. It helped me with ADHD and dyslexia. Soon after the first MD microdose, I stopped taking Concerta. Concerta started feeling like a drug and made me feel wound up instead of calming me down. I started reading again. It's been well over a decade since I picked up a book. And it's a lot easier when I don't feel that I need to reread each sentence 3 times for it to settle in. After MD, my drive for new knowledge got even stronger. And I kept looking forward to the next challenge. Even extra work felt exciting. My day-to-day life has significantly improved. I'm starting to get my interest back, and my hobbies are exciting once again. So that's what we're looking at. And let me give you a different one. I'm the Italian woman. Dear James, you did ask what I produced since starting microdosing, and I've been happily overproductive. I kept most of the sketches for so long. Microdosing erased procrastination from day 2, and they became drawings, digital arts, prints, gadgets, and costumes. Other benefits. I've cleared my negative thoughts. I've overcome many fears, including flying. I'm not using glasses anymore, and I want to follow that one up. Stabilized period, and increased intimacy with my partner. We have had a number of comments that said my libido's improved. This could be a really useful drug. And I'll just give you my last one because I don't want you all to think it's all of us sweet new age people. Hey, Chris, what work do you do? I'm a corporate banker working in acquisitions. Last year, the bank acknowledged me as the country's best salesman, and I won the National Sales Award while microdosing LSD and mushrooms.
Yeah.
Okay. So we probably you've used up our time by far, and we may not have any time for questions. And actually, if I can just read you one more short report, that's going to answer the rest of your questions. Okay?
Yeah.
Okay, this is from Australia. She has had just an awful, horrible life, and for the past year or so had been carrying with her what she called her suicide kit. Okay, she was under the care of a psychologist and a psychiatrist under heavy meds. After 1 month, here's her list. Improved impulse control, very big for me since I'm borderline. Better mood control, more contentment, no drinking, parentheses, over a month now, exclamation point. Reduced stress, looking forward to life, painting up a storm, increased ability to focus, less reactionary, hardly swearing at all. I didn't notice this, but a friend did. Resolving obsessive thoughts, eliminated during the day, increased gratitude, improved boundaries, and increased ability to give myself credit where credit is due. Microdosing is an area which we are beginning not to explore, we've explored it, we're beginning to research it, and we're beginning to allow it to be one of the ways that we can approach the general culture with something that doesn't frighten them. Thank you very much. And this is a wonderful conference, and I'm very sad not to be with you. All right.
Much, Jim. We are over time, but I think I will allow one question.
Okay, if we're going to have questions, I'm going to need them repeated because the sound from you guys isn't as clear as we'd like.
Okay, one question.
And a question, just to stop for a moment, a question is no more than a sentence, and it has a question mark at the end, and it never be. I got to tell you about my trip. That's taking care of all the questions.
I'm stealing this question a little bit from Hamilton Morris, and we were chatting about this last night, but he had brought up that, let me forward it into a quick question then. If we were going to look at the long-term effects of using psychedelics in small amounts in the brain, because all the research so far has been on bigger effects, how would you go about doing that so we make sure that we're not creating some sort of chronic problem?
Well, the long-term effects are basically by asking people who've been using them a long time. And if you look at the pharmacological literature, the usual long-term effect is a couple of weeks. That's like 90% of the studies. The fact that you're taking them for 10 to 20 years, nah, no point in researching that. However, in microdosing, I have 2 cases that come to mind. One is 17 years. She just won a national award as a small business woman of the year. She runs 2 companies, married with a lovely child. She also helps out at a major ecological festival, and she's terrific. And if you read my book, she's called Madeline, and that was when she'd only used it for 8 years. The other that comes to mind is someone who runs a company, does about 200 million a year, has plants in 5 countries, makes medical devices. And I was talking with a researcher a couple of years ago who was in disbelief that there could be a 2-day effect. This is an expert in addictions who knows when you need to shoot up again. And this guy who runs this big company walks past us, and I swear to God, the only thing he says to me is he looks down at me and says, "Second day is better." So, and one of the people who I didn't read to you was 2 days. No, the woman with the art who produced all the art, she's actually been in for 2 days. So it is our impression that since psychedelics are excreted from the body very quickly, and almost all the effects are catalytic reactions and a kind of cascade from that, that just as long-term LSD use, as we know from such literature as we have, mainly from criminal populations, makes you a little nicer in the long run, we're not suspecting any particular long-run effects from microdosing in either direction. And in fact, at the moment, the problem is going to be, can we find any measurable effects, except for the ones that are, which are mental and improve mood and so forth. So we really have no physiological data because nobody's basically done any. Now, again, when you go back to indigenous people who use microdoses, there are no complaints. So we don't know. And the nice thing is something you take every 3 days is probably less dangerous than something you take more often.
Thank you very much, Jim.